I will tell you the truth immediately, because at 98 years old I have no interest in wasting time with long introductions. The greatest secret of my long life is not a miracle food, not an expensive supplement, and certainly not luck. The real secret is something much quieter and far less dramatic. I started taking care of my body very early in life. And what began as small habits in youth slowly multiplied into the health I carry today. When people meet me now, they often ask the wrong question. They lean forward and say, "What do you do now to stay healthy at 98?" But the truth is that the answer begins 70 or 80 years ago. The body you live in during old age is not built suddenly. It is built gradually, day after day, year after year, long before you notice the results. Think of health like planting a tree. If you plant it today, you will not sit under its shade tomorrow. But if you plant it early and care for it patiently, one day it grows tall enough to protect you. That is how healthy habits work. They grow quietly through time. When I was young, I did simple things that most people ignored. I moved my body every day. I ate food that came from the earth rather than factories. I slept well. I kept my mind calm when life became difficult. None of these choices felt extraordinary at the time. In fact, they often felt insignificant. But here is the truth I learned after nearly a century of living. Small habits repeated for decades become powerful forces inside the human body. Your heart responds to them. Your muscles respond to them. Your brain responds to them. Even the speed at which your body ages responds to them. Health is not something that appears suddenly in old age. It is something you build slowly across a lifetime. And that is the lesson I want to share with you today. Let me explain what I mean when I say that early habits shape the body you will live in later. I did not understand the full science of it when I was young. In those days, we did not talk about metabolism, inflammation, or cellular aging. We simply spoke about taking care of yourself. Only many years later did scientists begin to describe the deeper mechanisms behind what I had been practicing for decades. The body is a patient accountant. It records everything you do, every meal, every night of sleep, every hour of movement or stillness is quietly added to a long biological ledger. When you are young, the consequences are often invisible. A 20-year-old body forgives many mistakes, but forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. The body remembers. Over time, these tiny daily entries accumulate. If the entries are mostly good, nutritious food, movement, rest, emotional balance, the body slowly strengthens its internal systems. But if the entries are harmful, excess sugar, constant stress, inactivity, poor sleep, the body slowly weakens those same systems. The difference is rarely dramatic in the beginning, but decades later, the gap becomes enormous. I saw this clearly as the years passed. Some of the friends I grew up with lived exactly as I did during childhood. We ran, we climbed trees, we walked long distances to school. But when adulthood arrived, many of them changed their lifestyles. Work became sedentary, meals became convenient rather than nourishing, sleep became shorter, stress became constant. At first, nothing seemed wrong. In our 30s and even our 40s, most of us still felt strong. But by our 50s, something interesting happened. The difference between those who had maintained healthy habits and those who had abandoned them began to appear. Some people developed chronic fatigue, others developed weight problems that would not disappear. Some faced early heart disease. A few began struggling with diabetes. It was not sudden. It was the slow result of decades of accumulated choices. Meanwhile, those of us who continued to care for our bodies experienced a very different path. Our energy remained stable. Our joints stayed flexible. Our minds stayed clear. It was not perfection. No life is free from illness, but the overall trajectory was different. You see, the body adapts to the conditions you give it. If you move your muscles regularly, they become stronger and more efficient. If you challenge your bones through walking, lifting, and physical work, the bones respond by becoming denser and more resilient. If you nourish your body with natural foods, your metabolism remains balanced. These adaptations are slow, but they are powerful. They are the biological equivalent of compound interest. Imagine two people starting adulthood with identical bodies. One of them walks 30 minutes a day, sleeps well, and eats whole foods most of the time. The other spends most of the day sitting, eats highly processed food, and sleeps poorly. After 1 year, the difference between them might be small. After 5 years, the difference grows noticeable. After 30 or 40 years, the difference can be dramatic. This is the compounding nature of health. Movement was one of the earliest habits that shaped my life. I never considered exercise something separate from living. My generation walked everywhere. We worked with our hands. We climbed stairs without thinking about it. Even when modern conveniences appeared, I tried to preserve that daily movement. Not extreme training, just consistent activity. Now at 98, I understand how valuable that decision was. Muscles are not merely for strength. They are protective organs. They regulate blood sugar, stabilize joints, and support metabolism. When people lose muscle as they age, many health problems begin to appear. But when muscle is maintained, the body remains far more resilient. Nutrition was another pillar. When I was young, food came mostly from farms, gardens, and local markets. Meals were simple but nourishing. Vegetables, grains, fruits, beans, and modest portions of animal foods formed the foundation of our diet. We did not obsess over calories or complicated diet plans. We simply ate real food. Only later did I learn how profoundly nutrition affects long-term health. The food you eat influences inflammation inside the body. It shapes the health of your blood vessels. It determines how your metabolism handles sugar and fat. It even affects the trillions of bacteria living in your digestive system, which scientists now know play a major role in immunity and brain health. Sleep is another habit many people underestimate. When I was younger, older relatives insisted that proper sleep was essential. At the time, I believed they were simply repeating old wisdom, but modern science confirms it. During sleep, the brain repairs itself, memories are consolidated, and the body regulates hormones that control appetite, stress, and metabolism. People often sacrifice sleep in their 20s and 30s as if it were optional. But sleep debt accumulates over time, just like financial debt. The longer it continues, the harder it becomes for the body to recover. Stress management was the final habit that shaped my health across decades. Life has never been free of difficulty. I lived through economic hardship, family losses, and many uncertain times. But I learned something important early on. Constant worry is one of the most damaging states for the human body. When stress becomes chronic, the body produces hormones that raise blood pressure, increase inflammation, and weaken the immune system. But when the mind learns to return to calm through reflection, prayer, walking, conversation, or simple gratitude, the body returns to balance. None of these habits were extreme. That is an important point. People often search for dramatic solutions to health problems, intense diets, punishing exercise programs, complicated regimens. But the most powerful habits are usually the simplest ones, repeated consistently over many years. Looking back now, what amazes me is how small those early decisions seemed at the time. Choosing to walk instead of sit, choosing a simple meal instead of processed food, choosing rest instead of exhaustion. None of these moments felt historic, yet together they shaped the body I now inhabit at 98. And that is why I say the greatest advantage you can give your future self is time. When healthy habits begin early, they have decades to shape your biology. The earlier the investment begins, the greater the return. By the time you reach old age, those habits are no longer efforts. They have become part of who you are, and the body you carry reflects the quiet accumulation of those choices. By the time I reached my 60s, something became very clear to me. Aging itself was not the real problem. What people feared was not the number of years, they feared the loss of vitality that often comes with those years. They feared weak muscles, fragile bones, foggy thinking, and the quiet loss of independence. But what I began to notice was that these outcomes were not distributed randomly. Two people could reach 70 years old and appear to be living in completely different bodies. One walked confidently, traveled, laughed easily, and remained mentally sharp. The other struggled to climb stairs, needed constant medication, and felt exhausted most of the time. The difference between these two paths rarely began at 60 or 70. The difference began decades earlier. When habits are formed early in life, the body gradually builds resilience. Think of resilience as a kind of biological reserve. Strong muscles provide a reserve against injury. Dense bones provide a reserve against fractures. Healthy blood vessels provide a reserve against heart disease. A well-trained brain provides a reserve against cognitive decline. These reserves do not appear suddenly in old age. They are constructed slowly across the years. I remember a man who lived near my neighborhood when I was younger. His name was Victor. He was not famous, not wealthy, and certainly not obsessed with health. But Victor had a simple lifestyle that never changed much. Every morning he walked several kilometers through the countryside. He worked in his garden. He ate modest meals that came mostly from his own soil. When he reached his 80s, people were astonished by his strength. His posture was upright. His memory was sharp. He still carried heavy bags of vegetables from his garden without assistance. Many people asked him what his secret was. He laughed and said something very simple: "I never stop doing the things that keep a human body alive." What Victor understood intuitively is something modern science now explains very clearly. The body responds to consistent signals. When muscles receive the signal of movement every day, they remain active and strong. When bones receive the signal of weight and resistance, they maintain their density. When the brain receives the signal of curiosity and learning, it continues forming new connections. But when those signals disappear, the body begins to conserve energy by slowly shutting those systems down. This is why inactivity is so dangerous over long periods. When the body stops moving regularly, muscles shrink, metabolism slows, blood circulation weakens. Over many years, this gradual decline creates the conditions for many chronic diseases. The same principle applies to the brain. The brain is not a fixed machine that simply deteriorates with age. It is a living network that adapts constantly. Reading, learning, solving problems, engaging in meaningful conversations, these activities stimulate the brain to maintain its neural pathways. Throughout my life, I tried to keep my mind active. I read books. I asked questions. I remained curious about the world even when I was already old by most people's standards. Curiosity keeps the brain alive in the same way movement keeps muscles alive. Another powerful habit that begins early is emotional stability. Young people often underestimate the influence of emotional patterns on long-term health. But the way you respond to life's challenges becomes a habit, just like diet or exercise. Some people react to difficulty with constant anger or anxiety. Others learn to respond with patience and perspective. Over time, these patterns affect the body deeply. Chronic emotional stress keeps the body in a state of alarm. Hormones like cortisol remain elevated, damaging blood vessels and weakening the immune system. But when the mind learns to return to calm, the body experiences long periods of physiological balance. Heart rate stabilizes, blood pressure lowers, inflammation decreases. These quiet processes protect the organs year after year. Looking back now, I realize that health is not one single decision. It is the architecture of daily life. It is the rhythm of how you eat, how you move, how you sleep, how you think, and how you respond to the world. Each of these elements contributes a small piece to the larger structure of long-term well-being. Many people believe they can ignore these habits in youth and repair the damage later. And it is true that the human body is remarkably capable of healing. Even people who begin healthy habits later in life can improve their health dramatically. But starting early gives you something extremely valuable: decades of biological advantage. Every decade of healthy living strengthens the systems that support longevity. Blood vessels remain flexible, metabolism remains efficient, bones remain strong, the brain maintains its network of connections. By the time old age arrives, These advantages accumulate into something remarkable: independence. At 98 years old, independence is the gift I value most. I can still walk without assistance. I can still think clearly. I can still enjoy conversation and observe the world around me with curiosity. None of this came from a miracle cure. It came from a lifetime of ordinary choices. I did not wake up one morning at 98 and suddenly become healthy. The person I am today is simply the continuation of habits that began when I was young. And that is the lesson I wish more young people understood. The habits you practice in your 20s and 30s are not temporary behaviors. They are the blueprint for the person you will become decades later. Every healthy meal, every walk, every night of proper sleep is a message you send to your future self. It is a quiet investment in the body and mind you will one day rely on. If there is one message I hope you remember from the long road of my 98 years, it is this: your future health is being built today, quietly and steadily, by the habits you repeat every day. People often believe aging is a sudden event that arrives late in life. But aging is not something that begins at 70 or 80. It begins much earlier, shaped by thousands of ordinary decisions. The food you choose, the way you move your body, the quality of your sleep, the calmness of your mind. These small actions slowly design the body you will live in later. What makes healthy habits so powerful is not intensity. It is consistency over time. A single healthy meal will not change your life. One walk will not transform your health. But thousands of healthy meals and thousands of walks across many years can shape a body that remains strong far longer than most people expect. That is the quiet mathematics of health. Small actions, multiplied by decades, produce extraordinary results. When I look back across nearly a century, I do not see a life of perfect discipline. I see a life of simple routines that were repeated often enough to become natural. I moved regularly, ate real food, rested when my body needed sleep, and tried to keep my mind steady even when life became difficult. Those habits slowly built resilience inside my body: strong muscles, stable energy, clear thinking, and the ability to remain independent even at this age. So if you are young, understand this: you possess the most powerful advantage of all time. Every healthy habit you begin today has decades to strengthen your body and protect your future. And if you are older, remember something equally important: it is never too late to begin building a better tomorrow, because the body always listens to the habits you practice today.